5,000 years ago, in the heart of the Alps, a man named Ötzi fought for his life. The icy wind whistled between the rocks, the sky darkened, and the world froze along with it. His blood soaked into the snow but did not disappear. It waited. When archaeologists found his body in a glacier, time seemed to have opened a capsule of the past. Geneticists extracted DNA, and the figures were astonishing. The same paternal lineage G2A2B is found in 7% of modern Italians. His descendants live among us, in Milan, Turin, Florence. He had brown eyes, copper skin, and traces of Anatolian farmers who came to Italy 8,000 years ago. His haplogroup connected ice and sun, hunters and farmers, ancient North and warm Mediterranean. Ötzi was not alone. He is the first known Italian, frozen between eras. The blood that flowed in him flows today. The question is different. Whose blood is also hidden in the veins of Italy? 45,000 years ago, the first humans set foot on Italian soil. They came from the north, through icy plains where the wind howled and glaciers thundered. Hunters, gatherers, people of darkness and cold. They followed herds of deer, unaware that they would become the foundation of a future people. In their blood flowed the ancient maternal lineage U5, one of the oldest in Europe. These women gave birth to children in caves, warming them by stone hearths. Their skin was dark, their eyes brown, their bodies strong and resilient. They survived the glacial horror and passed life onward. In their DNA is primordial Italy, the one without Rome, temples, or roads. Only forest, beast, and man. The descendants of these hunters still live in the north of the peninsula, their genes holding memories that have not faded with time. They are roots hidden beneath layers of civilizations. But if their blood flows today, who added light and wheat to it? About 8,000 years ago, the sea ceased to be a barrier. From the shores of Anatolia, people arrived across the waves, bringing with them not weapons, but grain. They brought wheat, goats, ceramics, and a special bloodline. Their paternal lineage, G2A, maternal, N1A. A study published in Science Advances in 2019 showed that the Anatolian Neolithic component accounts for nearly 80% of the genetic code of the inhabitants of Sardinia. These farmers changed everything. They brought settled life, the first stone houses, and the concept of land ownership. With them came the smell of bread and the sound of bells on the necks of domestic animals. Their children did not know hunting but learned to await the harvest. They became the ancestors of the future Etruscans and Latins. Anatolian blood laid the foundation of Italy, like an invisible foundation beneath Rome. They did not know the word Italy, but they were already building it. What if the roots of this country lie not here, but on the other side of the sea? 4,500 years ago, a wind from the east swept over Italy. It brought not words, but metal. People who came from the steppes between the Black and Caspian Seas knew the power of bronze and the horse. They brought with them new gods, new customs, and the male lines R1b, U152, and J2A. A study published in Nature in 2019 with the participation of Stanford University showed that up to 40% of the genome of the inhabitants of the Apennines at that time is linked to the steppe cultures of the Yamnaya and Catacomb peoples. Along with them came gray eyes, tall stature, and a language from which the dialects of the Latins would later emerge. Their bones are found in the Po and Arno valleys, next to ancient forges and urns made of fired clay. Metal became a god, and strength, a new faith. These people built no temples but established the foundations of future empires. Their descendants would leave swords in the ground and words in the blood. Scientists are shocked. Even under Rome, traces of steppe DNA have been found. What if Rome is not Europe's legacy but the breath of the steppes? On the hills of Tuscany, the wind sings ancient songs. Beneath layers of earth lie nameless cities. Stone walls, painted tombs, bronze mirrors. A trace of a people feared by both the Greeks and the Romans. The Etruscans. No one knew where they came from. Some said, from Lydia. Others said they sprang directly from the Italian soil. Archaeologists argued for centuries until genetics came to the rescue. In 2015, a study published in the European Journal of Human Genetics proved that Etruscans are descendants of local Neolithic farmers with lineages G2A and J2, not immigrants from the East. They spoke a strange language, unlike Greek or Latin, and buried their dead with refined beauty. Their blood flows in the inhabitants of Tuscany to this day. Scientists found matches in mitochondrial lines between ancient remains and modern Tuscans. The Etruscans disappeared, but their DNA survived. Perhaps they never left. The 8th century BC. Ships with white sails come to southern Italy. People from Corinth and Rhodes land on the shores where the air is fragrant with salt and laurel. They build Naples, Taranto, Syracuse. With them come wine, philosophy, and a new blood code. A study published in the European Journal of Human Genetics in 2015 showed that haplogroup J2, associated with Greek and Eastern Mediterranean colonies, today dominates the DNA of residents of Calabria, Basilicata, and Sicily. The Greek trace is not erased. It is dissolved in every Southerner, in their faces, gestures, songs. Hellenic blood has flowed here for 3,000 years, mingling with Anatolian and Etruscan lines. In the basalt stones of temples and in the dark eyes of descendants, one can hear the same accent of the sea. Italy became part of Hellas, and Hellas became part of Italy. They exchanged not only myths, but also genes. What if the Greek soul still lives in everyone born in the south? The 1st century BC. Rome stands on blood and stone. The empire grows like a fire. Along the roads from Africa, Syria, Egypt, and Greece flow streams of people, goods, and genes. Scientists from Stanford University in 2019, who published research in Nature, extracted DNA from 48 ancient Romans and came to a conclusion that froze the world. More than half of them are genetically closer to Cypriots and Syrians than to modern Europeans. Their veins mixed haplogroups, R1b, J2, E1b1b, and T2. A map of the empire inscribed in the body. Latin was spoken in the Forum, but under the skin resounded hundreds of languages. The Romans were not a people. They were a world. Soldiers, slaves, merchants, and women from all provinces created a new blood, a new identity. This city had no borders, on land or in DNA. The empire disappeared, but its genome remained. What if Rome still lives in each of us today? 79 AD, the day Vesuvius exhaled death. Pompeii froze in ash, like a photograph of the last breath. Under the rubble, hundreds of bodies, men, women, children. When scientists extracted their DNA, the result was astounding. In one house, they found a man with Middle Eastern roots, a woman with North African lineage, and a child with Italian genes. The city was not just Roman, it was the whole world at once. Molecules of blood intertwined like the streets beneath the ash. Here they spoke Latin, ate Greek dishes, wore Egyptian amulets. Pompeii is Rome's mirror, but an honest one, devoid of marble and myths. The people frozen in gray stone are the last witnesses of imperial mingling, the true face of antiquity. Scientists are shocked. Rome was not white but colorful, not singular but plural. And if the ash preserved their bodies, perhaps it also preserved their voices. 476 AD. The empire falls. On the northern borders, the sound of hooves thunders. Barbarians enter Italy, Ostrogoths, Vandals, Lombards. Blonde hair, gray eyes, foreign words. They brought not culture, but strength. Archaeologists find haplogroups I and R1b-U106 in the burial mounds of northern Italy, traces of Germanic clans. A study published in BMC Genetics in 2015 confirmed that up to 15% of men in Lombardy and Veneto are descendants of those who came from beyond the Alps. They mingled with the locals, leaving traits of the North in their descendants: high cheekbones, light skin, calm gaze. But this was not conquest, but a transfusion of blood. Old Rome died, but its flesh remained. The barbarians tore down the walls but built new families. The empire dissolved, but it lived on in their children. Can you accept that half of the northerners carry the blood of those whom Rome called enemies? The 7th century. A new wind comes to southern Italy from the east. Byzantine garrisons land in Bari and Ravenna, followed by merchants from Alexandria, then Arabs from Africa. Along with them, new words, faith, and blood. Studies of ancient DNA showed that in the southern part of the country, up to 10% of the genetic code is linked to the Middle East and North Africa. Among the male lineages, E1B1B and U6 are particularly notable, traces of those who sailed across the sea under sails and crescent moons. They left not only stones for mosques and crosses, but also imprints in the bodies of their descendants. Their children became Italians, but in their faces, the sun of the Sahara and the Aegean Sea still shines. Local women bore children with eyes the color of the sea after a storm. Migrations did not cease even during wars. Rome fell, but the Mediterranean continued to mix peoples. And if you look at the genetic map, where is the boundary between East and West? The 11th century. From the north come ships sharp as arrows. On their sails, crosses on their hulls, traces of salt and battles. These are the Normans, descendants of the Vikings. They land in Sicily and Apulia, bringing with them language, steel, and male lines, R1A and I1. Archaeologists find their traces in the fortresses of Enna and Palermo, and geneticists confirm less than 2% of modern Sicilians carry northern heritage. But it is not about the numbers. It is about memory. These people brought cold northern blood to southern Italy and added it to the warm sea of the east. Here, where the sun scorches stronger than a sword, the descendants of the Varangians built churches and taught Latin. Their names have disappeared, but their code remains. In their descendants, flame and ice, song and silence mixed. Italy absorbed them, like the earth absorbs rain. Scientists found northern genes even in Sicilian families living under the volcano. But what if the north and south merged not on maps, but in the very blood? Sardinia, an island where time has stopped. Here the wind smells of salt and iron, and the mountains keep the silence of the ancients. When scientists extracted DNA from the bones of the Neolithic inhabitants of the island, it turned out that 80% of their descendants still live here today. A study published in Science Advances in 2019 confirmed that male lineages G2A and I2A have changed little over 8,000 years. Neither the Romans, nor the Arabs, nor the Normans managed to erase their traces. Sardinia became a genetic capsule of Europe, where the face of the continent's first farmers was preserved. The people here are dark-haired, but their DNA is older than the Egyptian pyramids. Their blood is the past that survived. Scientists call Sardinia a living model of Europe before all migrations. Here there are no empires, only sea and memory. If you understand Sardinia, you can understand the beginning. But are we ready to see what our ancestors truly looked like? Italy is divided not by borders, but by blood. In the north, genes of Europe. In the south, the breath of the East. Scientists call this an invisible rift. In the DNA of the inhabitants of the Po Valley, haplogroup R1b predominates, the legacy of the Celts and Gauls. In the south, in Calabria and Sicily, J2 dominates alongside the trace of the Caucasian line CHG. Studies have shown that the genetic distance between the north and south of Italy is the same as that between Spain and Romania. The north is cool and strict, the south is hot and soft. They speak the same language, but carry different memories. The north remembers the Alps, the south, the sea. In the face of an Italian meet two civilizations, two lights. No empire has managed to merge them, but together they are Italy, a bridge, not a border. Their difference is a symphony, not a crack. But what if Italy itself is not a country but a living continent in miniature? 1,000 years ago, Italy simmered like metal in a furnace. After the Normans came the Spaniards, the French, the Austrians. Each left a mark, in words, in faces, in DNA. Archaeologists and geneticists call this period an era of mingling. In the bones found in Naples and Venice, scientists discovered lineages R1b, J2, E1b1b, like a page where time writes with all inks at once. Here, blood did not divide but intertwined. Southerners took wives from the north, northerners from the east. Veins became maps inscribed with the paths of empires. And though peoples changed, Italy remained itself, like a language absorbing foreign words, but not losing its accent. In every face, one can now read a history. A Celtic forehead, a Greek profile, an Arab shadow in the eyes. This is not chaos. This is a symphony of survival. Empires collapsed, but DNA knew no defeats. What if all wars were needed only to create one? Modern Italians? The Middle Ages fragmented Italy into shards. Genoa, Venice, Florence, Milan. Each became a separate world with its own speech, faces, and blood. Geneticists talk about micro-worlds. Valleys and coasts lived in isolation for centuries, creating their own DNA profiles. In Liguria, R1b predominates. In Florence, more J2. In Venice, Northern I and R1a can be found. Even neighboring villages differed from each other as if they were two different nations. Trade connected them, but mountains divided them. This colorful landscape gave rise to artists, bankers, mercenaries, and saints. Italy sounded like a choir, where each note had its own accent. Scientists compared samples from different regions and found differences exceeding those between countries in Europe. But it was this fragmentation that saved them. While empires fell, small cities survived. Perhaps Italy's strength has always been in its multiplicity. The 15th century. Italy became a trophy for empires. Spain, France, Austria, each wanted to carve off its piece. Armies came and went, but left their mark, not only in stone, but also in blood. DNA studies showed that the influence of conquests did not exceed 5% of the total genetic pool. People changed coats of arms, but not themselves. In the streets of Florence, French speech rang out. In Naples, Spanish. In Milan, German. But beneath the skin, Italy remained. Empires tried to erase the language, impose faith, change the face. They built fortresses and burned cities, only to vanish later. Italians absorbed everything and preserved their essence. Like fabric that withstands hundreds of stitches but does not tear. In this resilience lies their genetic code. History tried to redraw their map, but could not remake the people. What if true greatness lies not in conquests, but in the ability to remain oneself? The 20th century was a test of survival. Italy burned twice in wars, lost its sons, destroyed its cities, but not itself. Wars, emigration, poverty. All this did not erase the memory. Millions left for America, Argentina, Australia, carrying with them not suitcases but genes. Geneticists found descendants of Italians on all continents, and their DNA changed little. Studies showed that even after 4 generations, the same markers R1b, J2, and E1b1b are preserved. Blood knows no borders. It returns home when a person hears Italian speech or the smell of the sea. Wars and regimes tried to remake destiny, but they could not erase ancestral lines. Each migrant became a living vessel of history. Italy stretched across the world but did not fall apart. It endured not with weapons, but with memory. What if eternity is not time but a gene that has survived all ideologies? Modern Italy is like a mosaic made up of millions of fragments. Scientists have decoded its DNA and seen a map where every line is a trace of an era. Today, 55% of men have the dominant haplogroup R1b, the legacy of the Celts and the Bronze North. 25% carry J2, the memory of Hellas and the East. 15% are E1b1b, the warm breath of Africa. 7% belong to ancient I, who came from the glaciers. 2%. In every percent lies fate, war, love, a journey. If you combine all these lineages, you get the face of a country created not by one people but by time. Geneticists say Italy has no single blood but a shared memory. And in that memory live all who once stepped on this land. But what if this mosaic is the true beauty of Italy? The year 2025. A study by Italian geneticist Ravicini, published in Genome Biology and Evolution, turned everything that seemed established upside down. Scientists discovered that the Eastern Mediterranean component penetrated central Italy not during the Empire but much earlier, back in the Republic era. This means that in the Rome of the Senate and tribunes, the blood of sailors from the Levant and Aegean islands was already flowing. Haplogroups J2, E1b1b, and R1b intertwined long before Caesar. Rome was born not from the sword, but from the sea. In the blood of senators sounded the surf, in their bones, the smell of salt. This discovery forced historians to rewrite the chronicles. Rome was not a bastion of Europe, but a port of humanity. And when geneticists overlaid ancient DNA maps with modern ones, the lines matched. What began on ships thousands of years ago lives in every Italian today. But if the roots of Rome lie not in the land, but in the waves, who were those who built its fate? From the Alps to Sicily, from ice to sun, Italy has lived 10,000 years in the body of one people. In its veins, hunters and farmers, Greeks and Etruscans, Vikings and Moors intertwined. It has survived empires, wars, catastrophes, and always stood up again. Scientists see in its DNA not purity but beauty, a symphony created by time. The blood of Italy is not a line but a circle. Here, every gene is a witness and an artist. Every cell remembers the road to the sea. Everything that was tried to be erased has endured. Ötzi in the ice, Etruscans in the earth, warriors in the ash, they all live in its people. Italy is not a country, but a memory embodied in a face. When you look into these eyes, you see Europe, Asia, Africa. You see history itself. And if the breath of millennia resonates in every Italian, perhaps that is what immortality looks like.